Firewalls protect our networks, but how do they do that? They do that by controlling any network traffic that goes through them. So a famous example here is a firewall denying traffic from the internet. So when the internet tries to access the internal network, the firewall simply says, no, you cannot access our internal network today. That's what we associate with firewalls protecting networks. However, we can be nice and also configure allow rules in our firewall. So what if a computer needs access to the internet but needs to go through the firewall? Then we can simply tell the firewall, hey, allow this computer some access to the internet, and then the firewall will just somehow blindly say yes because we can tell it to do that. We can also tell the firewall to redirect any traffic. So, for example, any traffic from the internet gets redirected somewhere. For example, this server here, which we call the demilitarized zone, but we'll go through that very soon. And finally, we can monitor traffic that goes through the firewall. So, for example here, we have these random IP addresses that come from the internet. The destination is the firewall, which is this 46.18 address. And what the firewall is doing here is simply blocking those IP addresses. So therefore, no access today. So one of the most well-known features of a firewall is the demilitarized zone, also known as a DMZ, which is a buffer zone between two areas, like this one for example here, the Korean DMZ. So the pink area there, that's a DMZ. So what it does is that it separates the two networks, for example, North and South Korea here. So it separates those two areas. It also restricts access, and it also traps anyone that goes through that demilitarized zone. So firewalls more or less do the same. For example, here we have this two firewall setup. So any traffic from the internet that tries to access the internal network gets stuck in this web server here. So in short, anyone from the internet will see a web page instead of access to the black computer right there. We can also configure one firewall setup, DMZ, which is what we're doing today for this lab, but just by looking at that topology alone, it doesn't do anything. So what should we do there? Well, we can simply configure a port forwarding rule to that firewall, where we're basically saying, hey Mr. Firewall, please redirect any unknown traffic from the internet to that web server, so that anyone from the internet will see the web server's web page instead of access to the computer. So for today's lab, we're gonna create a simple network, which looks like this here. And so what it does here is that the firewall has three interfaces: the LAN interface, the WAN, and the DMZ. We're going to use Kali Linux as our LAN and management client today, followed by Ubuntu, our web server, and our Windows Server client, which is a WAN client. So the whole point of this lab is to redirect any WAN traffic to the DMZ. So this Windows Server here, when we type 64.100.0.1, which is our firewall's WAN IP, that traffic gets sent to the DMZ web server. So in short, when we browse the firewall's WAN IP address, we will see Ubuntu's web page, which is a default web page. It's nothing fancy. So let's do that right now. So what I did off camera was that I prepared my virtual machines and configured their IP addresses, except for the firewalls. So if we go check Kali Linux's IP here, it's 10.10.10.2. Gateway is 10.10.10.1. And then if we go to Ubuntu, we can set the web server up by typing sudo service apache 2 start. And then if you go look up the IP address, then we can just say localhost. Yep, now we know it works. And I've already set up the IP address here, I think. Yep, so 10.5.5.10. And also for Windows Server, I did that using ncpa-cpl, but we can double check by typing ipconfig in the command prompt. Yep, so you can see 64.100.0.100. And the firewall, I haven't touched that yet, so we're going to do that now. So the next thing we're going to do in the firewall is to configure our LAN interface for management access. So let's do that by typing option 2, set interface IP address. And we're going to choose 2 because we want to configure LAN. We're going to enter the LAN's IP address, which is 10.10.10.1/24. IP gateway. No, we don't need a gateway address for this one. No IPv6. No DHCP either. Do you want to revert to HTTP? Yes. And then it will load up the web configurator, which is the GUI. Now we press enter. And the important thing here is that we're gonna go to VM settings and change this one to VMNet2. The reason why I put NAT there at first is because the firewall needs to access the internet to get the license. Without the license, then we won't be able to use the firewall. The next thing is we go to Kali, go to Firefox, and then let's do a private window here, and then type out 10.10.10.1. So we enter our username, which is admin. Password is pfSense, all lowercase. So we're gonna skip the wizard and just move on to the configuration of the WAN and DMZ interfaces. The next thing we're gonna configure is the WAN interface. So if you go interfaces, WAN, make sure the interface is enabled. Description is WAN, of course. The IPv4 configuration type is static. We're gonna set a static IP address for all of our firewall interfaces. So for this one, it will be 64.100.0.1. That's our public IP address, and then /24. Yep, and then leave everything as is, and then save. Apply changes. It will take a while. Now, if you're confused about me using a public address, I'm actually not using an IP address like a real one that's connected to the internet. It's just simulated between my virtual machines. So, in short, I have a fake public network here, not a real one. Because if I need a real one, I have to pay for it. So apply changes. It will take a while. So that took like around what, 30 seconds. It takes a while, but anyway, the next thing we're gonna do is configure our DMZ interface. So let's go to assignments and assign this network port. So we're gonna click add. So it will say OPT1. Let's click on that one. Let's rename that. Oh, first let's enable it. Rename it to DMZ. The configuration type is static as always. And we're going to type the IP address, which is 10.5.5.1/24. And then, yeah, leave everything as is and save it. Apply it. Now that will take a while again. Okay, let's configure our port forwarding rules for WAN to DMZ traffic. So if you go to firewall, NAT, and then add. So now we're here. Let's configure our port forwarding rule. So your interface should be WAN. Protocol should be TCP because HTTP uses TCP. Source, leave it as is. The source can be any source. The destination should be our WAN address, which is our 64.100.0.1 address. So we don't need to do anything there. The port range, however, will be HTTP or port 80. So our redirect target IP. So this will be the DMZ's IP address. So by doing this, we're now telling the firewall to redirect any unknown internet traffic to the DMZ server. Oh, sorry, I put 10 there, not 1. Sorry, 10. And then description. It's good practice to put a description there. Let's put redirect WAN traffic to DMZ because that's exactly what we're doing. NAT reflection, yes, we're going to enable that. So what NAT reflection does is that LAN clients can use the WAN IP address to access the DMZ. So if we type 64.100.0.1 from a LAN client, we should be able to see Ubuntu's web page. And finally, we should add an associated filter rule. So it will automatically create a firewall rule for us that corresponds to this network address translation. So we're going to click save. Oh, what did we miss here? Redirect target port. Okay, yeah, so I missed that one. Let's put HTTP because we are trying to access the DMZ word server's web page here. So we're going to click save, apply. Now we've applied it. Let's see if we have a rule for that. Yep, so we have a rule that's already made for us. So the source, any source, the destination will be 10.5.5.10, port 80, and the description is NAT redirect WAN traffic to DMZ. So let's test it right now. Let's ping the Windows WAN first. 0.100 ping. So yeah, so the firewall can ping our Windows server, which is right here. Let's also ping our DMZ. If the pings don't work, then you gotta fix that. So in this case, we don't need to do anything because we can ping both the DMZ and the WAN. So we know we're good to go. So the next thing we're gonna do is browse the firewall's WAN IP, which is 64.100.0.1. So if we're here at Edge. Let's browse 64.100.0.1. We should be able to see Ubuntu's web page. Let's repeat that. See if it actually works. So it actually works. And if you want to make sure that works, you can simply capture the traffic using Wireshark. And let's go to VMnet 2. No, I do not want an update. Let's skip that for now. Yep, so let's go to VMnet 2 here, which we know is our WAN network. So let's click on that one. And let's put it side by side here. So if you keep clicking here, so we know that the three-way handshake works. And the HTTP handshakes also work. So we know we have everything working. So that's it for the DMZ lab. I may make an extension of this where we make a management where we make a management interface, and we're basically making the DMZ topology even more advanced. So that's it for now. Also, one more thing before I forget is that if you want to remake this lab, I've made a documentation which lists exactly what I did. So if you want to try this lab out, then you can just go in the description and download this PDF file. So yeah, that's about it for me, and I hope you learned something.